Coming to you live from Navasota, Texas, this is Inside Out. And now here's your host, Asad Mahana.
Hello and welcome to Inside Out. I'm not Asad Mahana, I'm Michael Gaines, and glad you are joining us today. We are going to be having a great conversation on today's show, talking about a recent collaboration announced between Schlumberger and NOV on combining the DrillOps platform with Schlumberger and the NOVOS system here at NOV. So we're going to have a great conversation, talk a little bit about the origins of that, and get some insight from two key folks in that conversation. So looking forward to getting to that in just a second. Before we do, want to head over to Shelby Dumaine, our social media specialist, and talking a little bit about the social side of things, which you always do and do so well. So good to see you, Shelby.
Good to see you as well, Michael. You know, it's my favorite thing to talk about. So I'm you know.
Well, you're in the right seat.
Yeah,
You're in the right seat.
Maybe a little biased. Yeah, so if you're watching this at home and would like to get involved in the show and would like to be part of the live Q&A that we do at the end of the episode, you can do so by commenting, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, from work, from home, from Houston, from Brazil, wherever you're tuning in from. You can comment down below, and we're going to look at all those comments. As y'all can see, I got some screens up here, so I'm in the comment sections throughout the entire show, and I'm gathering your questions, and we're going to do as many of those as we can at the end of the show. You'll be able to ask any of our experts that we have on the show today. I always love to put Michael in the hot seat, so you can ask him questions as well. And anything you have, we're gonna do that live Q&A there at the end. So I look forward to seeing your questions and seeing you online. So back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Shelby. Yeah, the seat is never hot; it's always cool. So we're gonna keep it that way. So speaking of cool, we have two cool dudes here that are joining us. We are talking about the recent collaboration again between Schlumberger and NOV with the DrillOps and NOVOS platforms. So with us, joining us live here, we have Rajeev Sonthalia, who is the President, Digital and Integration with Schlumberger, joining us, I believe, from London. Is that right, Rajeev?
That's right.
All right.
In London at home.
At London at home. Yeah, all right. Well, I'll take it. Well, not at home and in studio, we have David Reid, NOV's Chief Technology Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. So thanks for being here, David.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the show today.
All right. Well, let's jump in, and I'll start with you, David. So I know that folks that have followed the technology and conversation in the industry are always trying to keep up with lots of the happenings that are going on. And so I'm sure one of the questions they have, one of the questions I had and have is how did this conversation begin? Because this was a big announcement that came out.
Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was some work that we did over time. From my perspective, and Rajeev may be better at telling the story, but I know that our CEOs met and had a conversation, and that also led to Rajeev and I talking. And it wasn't the first time we've tried to do this, but it certainly was the most successful. So we managed to get somewhere pretty quick. I don't know, Rajeev, do you want to try and answer some of that?
Actually, we've been talking for a while, and I would say both the companies realized for a long time that we are something that could be transformational to the industry, and we've been talking for a while on how we could put something together, but we never really came to a conclusion on the way forward. And then when I started in this new role, I tried to find out what happened in the past, and I told the team that, listen, I'm going to reach out to David, and some of them said, oh, no, nothing's going to come up. We've been trying for many years, nothing's going to happen.
I knew I was the problem.
Then I asked a few other people, and they said, actually, David's quite an open guy. So I said, okay, well, I don't lose anything by reaching out to David, and so we did. And I think very early we agreed that there is benefit for both sides in this sort of partnership, as well as benefit to the industry. And we sort of agreed on where we can play and where I know we can play and how we can together create something for everyone. And I think that's sort of how it started.
Right. So maybe sticking with you, Rajeev. So, like you said, you reached out. It makes sense to do that, but why now?
Well, I think say post-COVID, we've seen as an industry a huge acceleration in digital, right? And a lot of our customers, our common customers, are now moving very rapidly towards digital transformation because overall, I would say I think we all realize that the industry needs to do a lot more to, let's say, become more competitive versus other sources of energy. And the lower for longer is now becoming lower for much, much longer. So digital is one way to reduce, let's say, operating cost, and that's, I would say, one of the precipitating factors on why now is this is the time when we have to reinvent ourselves to sustain a longer future for our industry.
Yeah, I think we'd heard it a lot from our customers, both of us. Just how can we work to get you guys to work together, because they want the two softwares to play together. And although we tried, I think that was probably the starting point that was important, was just Rajeev and I both saying, we need to get this done. This has to happen. And so getting the teams and more asking how do we do it than can we do it, which I think before we were looking at can we, and when you present it that way, I think everyone's like, well, there's these issues and these problems and these challenges, and the teams just got together and did the work really to test and show that we could do it. And once we had that, that really led the way.
So then when you're looking at this opportunity and collaboration, of course and we're going to get to, what that looks like from an operator standpoint and for the oil companies. As you get there, of course, there's also distinct advantages for each organization as well. As you look at that, and maybe I'll start with you, Rajeev. How do you see this also benefiting the Schlumberger organization?
Yeah, I think overall, if you look at Schlumberger, we are doubling down on digital quite aggressively, not just in terms of automation, which is what we're talking about here, but also in terms of the cloud and the edge and different other domains. So I think this one specifically, partnering with NOV, which is a leading player in the well construction side, and it really makes a big difference to not only passing on to the rest of the organization that we're willing to work with our partners, and some of our partners can be our competitors. So what I see from an organizational perspective is we learn that we can compete in some areas and we can partner in some areas as long as we do it good of the industry as well as, of course, for ourselves. And that's a big thing from an organizational perspective, is to open up everyone's minds to partnership. We're too long an industry where everybody is so sort of siloed in their own little organization and trying to win market share at the expense of others.
Yeah, and I think that's the modern world. This is where we are, and we've all known that. And if you listen to both Schlumberger and NOV speaking, we were saying we were going to work with the others, we're going to play, we're going to integrate. But the actual work of doing it was probably culturally and technically had some things we had to work through. But I think probably that was the important thing we started with, was where do we overlap? Okay, let's not worry about that. Let that be competitive, but where we're together and how can we integrate? We looked at that too, and that really helped to get positive on who, where are our businesses? Who do we sell to? How do we bring product to the market? And how can we integrate for the industry? And that was really where we managed to move faster.
So if you're just joining us today, we are having a conversation about the recently announced collaboration between NOV and Schlumberger with the NOVOS and the DrillOps platforms. If you have a question that you'd like to ask David or Rajeev, feel free to put that in the comment section, whether you're watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and we will get to Shelby Dumaine in just a little bit to try to get as many of those questions answered as we can on today's program before we wrap up later. So maybe the next question, of course, as you kind of illustrated it, actually both of you, the idea that there are in these types of initiatives, you're not doing it for the sake of the exercise. Ultimately, it's for the customer, for the end user. So what does this collaboration provide the customers, maybe in the case of operators and other oil companies, that they wouldn't have been able to capitalize on if this wasn't in place? And Rajeev, maybe I'll start with you on that one.
Right. So I think look, we've been the vision we've had for a long time is that a lot of people understand driverless cars very well, and we've always wanted to be able to move to an end state where we have autonomous drilling, like autonomous driving, right? And the vision, or let's say the big, hairy, audacious goal, is to be able to drill wells with, let's say, nobody on the rig, as a vision, as an ambition. And there are many steps to get there. It's not simple to do that. And obviously, we've been working on the technology to do that. NOV has been doing the same thing. And then I think from a customer's perspective, they would obviously like to reduce the risk of drilling, reduce the number of people when we're constructing wells, and obviously overall lower the cost of operations. And most of you know that about, I think, 15% of total drilling cost is really non-productive time. So if we can use automation to reduce that NPT and bring it down to low single digits, that's where the big value is, right? So we can really significantly make an impact to do that by replacing, unfortunately, man with machine. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And there's 4 players in this game when you go to a drilling rig, right? So there's the service company, there's us, the equipment supplier, and then you've got the driller who owns the hardware doing the work, and then you've got the operator who's driving everything. And those relationships are quite complex in how they work and what everybody wants out of it. So that was probably the strongest thing we recognized early, was that there definitely was a need. There's a desire for this end goal from the operator, but the service company, supplier, and driller in the mix, we all have to work out, okay, well, how do we deliver what they need? And one of the more complex things was to get the softwares to play together. But it turned out it was a lot easier than we all thought as we got together, started working. So for us, we have that. We generally are selling to the drillers when it comes to a NOVOS system, although sometimes we sell to operators. And Schlumberger generally always selling to the operator. And so we were able to actually, in this conversation, get to a place where both of those players can have their needs covered and represented, and we can actually integrate something that delivers the end result but keeps everyone on the same page. So there were 2 results in my responses that I got from people. One was just surprise. Didn't expect this. It kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. But the other was finally. A lot of people said, finally, this is what we wanted. And so that was a good response, where I think there's a timing right now, as Rajeev said. We've just gone through this adoption that probably will be documented at some point as an amazing adoption globally of digital things, because everyone was submerged. Everyone got put into using technology that maybe they didn't before, and including rigs and how they worked. And so it really was timely. And so we're seeing very, very positive response to this. And I think there's more. There'll be more of this. This is just the first one that you've heard of between us. But there'll be more things coming across all of the supply chain.
So when we're looking down the line here, of course, folks are always pining to they say, okay, I understand this. So what does the next thing look like, and what does the future look like with respect to this collaboration? I'm not asking anybody to sign on the dotted line. I've learned my lesson a long time ago, but to the degree to which we can talk about, I mean, what's the expectation as we look ahead?
Well, I'll start with that. I think barriers have been removed by doing this on our teams, and I think that's what you're going to see more and more of in the industry. So it's not that we're going to project what it is, but we're obviously going to be able to do more things. This was the first task where we thought, yeah, we can execute this, and when we tried it, it turned out, yeah, both teams were like, yeah, actually this works very well. And then back to what the end customer will get is rapid integration. where things will happen the way we're used to seeing it in other digital fronts, where, okay, I want to use Schlumberger on a NOVOS system. Okay, that's an easy step, as opposed to some complicated conversation I now have to have with two organizations. So I think that easy nature of digital is going to come more and more how we operate.
Do you feel the same, Rajeev?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just an opening chapter in collaboration, and it's obviously great that we are sort of leading the way. We're the first ones to do it, especially in the oil field services space. You don't see it a lot. You see a lot of that in the digital sort of arena, and we've sort of leading the way. So I will see. I'm sure we'll see more of this in the years to come, and even between our two organizations, now that we've kind of figured out that it's not as difficult as we first thought, and we can work together. And there's a number of things that David and I are talking about that we can do going forward beyond just this initial, let's say, partnership.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No. Well, I'm excited, as I know many others are, for what this means and where we're headed. So I'm now going to transition to folks that are excited to hear their questions get answered. So we're going to shift over to Shelby Dumaine to get some of those questions from folks that are watching us online right now.
I'm excited to do it. We've gotten some really great questions so far. And I actually wanted to kick off with one we've talked about on the show before. I think Assad's talked to you about it. Anytime automation comes up, I think this is a natural question to also come up. So I'm interested on y'all's thoughts. We got a question asking, how does this work with replacing people? You hear that a lot with automation. You know, what about the workers and kind of that realm? So I'm curious if you could talk to that that kind of the concern.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. I mean, one is jobs change, you know, and some jobs do go away. I mean, we found that in many businesses as technology comes along, jobs change, and everyone says the same thing. Oh no, we're not going to be riding horses. What about the guys who look after horses? And you know, we're going to be driving cars. This is a terrible turn for culture and society. And of course, jobs change. People do different things. Same with this. The technology is changing and the jobs are changing and what they are. I know we run a drilling rig here. We have the robots out there, but the team still works on things. There's plenty to do. It just changes. And once people get a vision for the future, they get excited about it. And I think every time we've done this with drilling rigs, when we first put in digitization, people were very nervous about that. But drilling rigs, you know, have continued. In fact, we probably did a disservice in that the complexity of everything caused more people to be needed on rigs, and that's what's being pressured. So we went from, you know, no more than 100 on a rig to now we got 200 beds on a jackup. And everyone's asking why, and that's where efficiency comes in. And I think particularly what Rajeev will probably talk to is that remote capability is something that, you know, probably is very positive for jobs.
Yeah, I think you know, the job will maybe move from let's say a high risk location to a low risk location. You can work from your home, from your office. So I think jobs will change. They'll relocate. And you know, I think the industry will be better for it. It will be safer, will be more efficient, and you know, we can actually dream about being a Six Sigma industry where we make less errors. Right? I mean, if you look at very big picture, if we had the same reliability in the airline industry as we have in our industry, it'd be hard to fathom how bad it'd be for human lives. And now, if we get more and more automation, we do autopilot that they have in the airline industry, for example, it is going to make life safer for us. So I think jobs will change, jobs will relocate, and the industry will be better for it overall.
I think that performance focus is, because it, like Rajeev opened with it, the industry needs it. We need our costs to constantly be going down and being competitive in our space. And so someone wrote to me yesterday and asked, should I be studying drilling automation, you know, for my PhD? And I was like, yes. I said, what a great area to be going into. I said, well, all the messaging, I'm not sure that's a great future. I'm like, it's a great future. We have a lot of drilling to do, and this is the best way to go after it. So when people are looking at careers, this area is the arena. You know, as we digitize and get performance out of these rigs and go places we never thought we could go. from cost management as well as resource access.
Yeah, and I think going along with that, this next question is good. So that from the efficiency standpoint, from kind of the overall cost savings, this next one's asking, what about the upsides to automation after implementation as far as HSE is concerned, and safety and quality from that standpoint?
Yeah, I think HSE particularly, and yeah, Rajeev mentioned it earlier, but I really believe that from the first day I started in the industry and I saw the risk, I have this natural response to let's get people out from harm's way, you know. And so I think the future, less people at risk. We're in a risk environment, but the idea of removing people from the floor, one day seeing, you know, the cabin being something we use for service or local operations, but generally starting to operate away from the floor, having that option is definitely ahead of us, where we start thinking about, if you're in a well control situation and I don't have to be up there, then why would I be? So I think those types of things, as well as when it's not necessary for them to be there anymore, that's going to be a good thing for our industry. And so I think it'll just improve the safety of our systems.
Yeah.
Maybe you
And
can
not
talk to
just
quality about it.
and not just on the rig floor as well, right? I mean, there's obviously we have lots of examples of blowouts, safety of the well as a whole, you know, all the safety precautions around it, the two barriers, et cetera, et cetera. So as you go more and more towards automation, you will be able to then drill wells, reach longer, difficult to access reservoirs, but in a much, much safer way.
Yeah. And
Because the teams can react faster than humans. We all know that, right? So I think it's important to have that in mind.
there's a whole connecting that's coming next, which this is a part of, where what you learn as you're drilling, you could actually have a good map, which is something we have, you know, we're going to be able to connect up in this system, is the ability to know what's the best well and then also adjust it based on past well information. So that closing the loop on past performance as well as current plans, and then adjustability inside of the well. That's where we're all going with these systems, and that's going to mean not quality wells start to just not just improve the risk of blowout, but also the performance that the well can have in production.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting several kind of, I want to group them together, that this is also kind of a follow-up to that before we get to some of the other questions. And so we got a question from LinkedIn about what skills do you think employers or companies will be seeking for in the future when it comes to automation or similar integrations?
Gosh, I mean, the normal coding, we used to say that you need to have coding skills, but most younger people coming up have basic levels of coding. But I think it's although the obvious digital answers are there, I would say that the understanding of operations is one of the things that we're going to struggle with. So field experience, you know, actually, so that everyone wanting to do the digital, we definitely find the actual application knowledge is going to be one of the things that people are going to have to develop and not miss, because we see it with our data scientists. I'm sure Rajeev has the same issue, where you've got data scientists who understand how the data works, but the application specialists as well. So although data science, of course, is great everywhere, but it's finding a way that you can niche your career and bring value. So I would say practical knowledge as well in the petroleum skills as well as the drilling skills.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk about within Schlumberger is how can we develop T-shaped profiles, and when we say T-shaped is so they need to be strong in their domain. So let's say I'm a strong well engineer or a drilling engineer. How can I learn data science? Have a little bit of knowledge of geology. Some of our TDs have a geology knowledge. Our directional drillers have it. But really, is how do you expand your knowledge? Not only have the domain knowledge, as David mentioned, but digital skills. So it's either the digital people learn the domain or the domain people learn the digital. But people need to be more T-shaped in their personality, in their learning. But also, I think the other important point is that in the new world, not one individual does not know everything or will not know everything. So it's also important that some of the skills, the softer skills, where people can collaborate better, are going to be very important for the future as well, not just the technical part, of course.
That's right. It's the interaction and teamwork, and even what we've done here, the ability to collaborate, which those are softer skills that you need. But yeah, one of my favorite things that has been happening in this automation space is inside of the DSATS group, they kind of developed DrillBotics, which we should have Fred on here sometime. That'd be fun. But that project across colleges where they all start actually doing autonomous drilling work, and we've set up models where they can start working within AI. So what they're doing is doing closed loop autonomous drilling in college. And what we did was we took a barrier away for when they come into the workforce, because when you come in the workforce, everyone said, only a few years ago, not possible, we're never going to see autonomous systems. But when you have folks coming through college, actually in a competition where they can develop autonomous systems, it's really helpful to have a knowledge of what's possible and really where the limiters are. So yeah, that's a good skill.
So I think we have a couple more questions, Shelby. I say it every time. I'm surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised at the vigor of the Q&A, which is one of my favorite parts. So.
Mine too, of course. And
yeah,
I think we have time for probably 2 more questions we're going to have here. And this first one's going to come from Aram on LinkedIn. And he wants to know, this is for either you, Rajeev, or David, what's your opinion on all these technologies, machine learning, automation, data science, in regards to how they're being innovated and adapted for drilling technologies? And if you could talk about maybe some barriers you see there, or kind of what do you see in the space of how it's moving forward?
Yeah, where can we innovate as we continue to look down the line?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead, Rajeev.
Yeah, look, I was thinking, I'm going to start with the second question first, is in terms of where the barriers. I think the biggest barriers really, honestly, is imagination and the ability to dream, right? I think from a technology perspective, the barriers are coming down really, really fast. So it's really about how we think we can bring that technology to use in our industry. So it's about being imaginative, being ambitious, and maybe sometimes, it's a standard term in the digital world, fail fast, learn fast. How can you experiment and learn from it? So really, I would say the barrier is our own thinking. And so that's one thing. And I think there's just a lot that can happen with this technology, with these new digital technologies, machine learning, AI, in the drilling space as well. For example, I was thinking about offset well analysis. Our engineers spend a lot of time, days, weeks, months. Our clients' engineers spend a lot of time trying to figure out the least risk well design based on all the different lessons learned from the past. That all that data could be automated, and you can use data science, improve the risk management. You can actually design better wells, and then if you design a well which you can then drill automatically through this partnership, imagine you have one digital ecosystem where you design digitally and execute digitally. So really, there's just a lot that can be done with this new technology that's coming out from, let's say, Silicon Valley.
I think for us, our what we often see is there's a lot of risk of buzzword in this space where everyone's talking, using the words, using the language. The real barriers are value, because we've seen a lot of investment in this space, but often not focused on, where's the returns, where's the performance. And as well as I think there's lower cost ways of doing things. I think a lot of our NOVOS development that made it work was a focus on how do we start in the shales? I mean, how do we go into a low cost environment? And I think if we hadn't have done that, that is a barrier in the AI, ML, and all of those areas. If you can use the words less, and we found this with automation over the years too. Automation isn't a thing. The question is, what value can you bring by doing something? And so for us, that's the challenge: is how do you bridge it and turn it into a revenue generating model for everybody? And I think that's the big one. We did work in 2004 with Schlumberger, proving remote automation using drilling algorithm, but it didn't matter. What we had to do is then sit and go, is there a product here we can develop? And that started DrillLink, which facilitated remote directional drillers. But I think that's the big question always, is, where can we bring value that someone will pay for, and as opposed to follow the buzzword. It's one of the real problems is when you staff up and you build something and you get tons of data but can't act on it or give any value from it. So I actually think that's the barrier.
Excellent. We'll end it with this last question, which we just got in, and I thought, thank you, viewers. These were all great questions, but I thought this last one was great to end on. So we see around the world that, operators everywhere are kind of taking cost optimization measures. And so this user on LinkedIn wanted to know, how does digitalization of drilling fit in to those cost optimization measures?
Gosh, it's right in the middle. I mean, it's the reason why. Everything that we're doing here potentially can remove cost. Every time, even when you look at carbon footprint of human beings going to rigs and that physical aspect, but there's a cost aspect as well that comes with that. And so we're really taking cost out of the system. People working from home has a value. People working remotely has a value. All of those things are helping us to provide I would say the same, if not better, always improving kind of processes at lower costs. And so that's really where it gets exciting.
Yeah, I think this is digital and automation is the heart of cost reduction. Not only do you reduce the cost of drilling one well, but you could potentially drill one well instead of two in the future, which means you produce the same amount of oil with less wells to drill. So it's really, I think it is absolutely at the heart of the whole cost equation.
Great. Well, man, those were some really good questions from our viewers. Appreciate the insight that they were able to provide us, and certainly Rajeev and David, really appreciate you sharing a little bit of the inside conversation with respect to this exciting collaboration that's just getting kicked off, and looking forward to the many things that will come down as a result. So we have been speaking with Rajeev Sonthalia, who's the president, digital and integration with Schlumberger, and David Reid, NOV's chief technology officer and chief marketing officer, about the collaboration between Schlumberger and NOV on the DrillOps and NOVOS platforms. So Rajeev, David, thank you so much today for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. We will end today's session. We're going to be having some new faces coming down the pike soon, but until then, stay tuned for NOV Live coming up soon.